In the early decades of the 20th century, the world was a powder keg, waiting for the spark that would ignite global conflict. The origins of World War II, one of the deadliest and most devastating wars in history, were complex, rooted in political, economic, and social upheaval, and driven by the ambitions of aggressive leaders. The story of the war's beginnings is not just one of nations in conflict, but also a story of missed opportunities, failed diplomacy, and the consequences of unresolved issues from the Great War, World War I. The Treaty of Versailles, signed in 1919, was meant to bring peace after the catastrophic bloodshed of World War I. But the peace it forged was fragile, and the wounds it left behind would fester for decades. The treaty placed the blame for the war solely on Germany and demanded crippling reparations. It dismantled empires, redrew borders, and left millions of people without a homeland. The Treaty of Versailles didn't just punish Germany. It punished entire populations. There was a deep sense of humiliation in Germany. The country was economically devastated, politically unstable, and ripe for radical ideologies to take root. In the years that followed, the world grappled with economic instability. The Great Depression of the 1930s devastated economies worldwide, particularly in Europe. Amidst this turmoil, radical ideologies gained traction. In Italy, Benito Mussolini established a fascist dictatorship, promising to restore the greatness of the Roman Empire. Mussolini's rise was a warning sign. He promised order and national pride, and the Italian people, struggling with unemployment and political chaos, were willing to follow him. But it was in Germany where the seeds of war would truly take root. Adolf Hitler, a charismatic and ruthless leader, exploited the bitterness and disillusionment of the German people. He founded the Nazi Party, promoting a vision of racial superiority, anti-Semitism, and the expansion of German territory. In 1933, Hitler became Chancellor of Germany. His first actions were to consolidate power, eliminating political opponents, curbing civil liberties, and establishing a totalitarian regime. The Nazi Party's ideology centered on the concept of Lebensraum, or living space, which called for the expansion of Germany into Eastern Europe and the subjugation of non-German peoples. As Hitler pursued his expansionist agenda, Europe's major powers struggled with how to respond. In Britain and France, the memory of the First World War was still fresh. The idea of another conflict was unthinkable. In the face of Hitler's increasing aggression, first with the remilitarization of the Rhineland, then the annexation of Austria in 1938, these powers turned to appeasement. They believed that by conceding to some of Hitler's demands, they could avoid war. Appeasement was the hope that giving in to some demands might prevent a larger war. But in hindsight, it was a fatal mistake. It emboldened Hitler and gave him the green light to go further. In 1939, just months before the war would erupt, Hitler made a surprising move. In a secret agreement with Joseph Stalin, the leader of the Soviet Union, Germany, and the USSR, signed the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact. This non-aggression treaty ensured that Germany would not face a two-front war, allowing Hitler to focus on his Western neighbors. The pact between Nazi Germany and the Soviet Union shocked the world. It effectively sealed the fate of Poland which would be invaded from both sides and mark the end of diplomacy as a tool for peace. On September 1st, 1939, Germany invaded Poland. In response, Britain and France declared war on Germany. World War II had begun. Within days, the conflict spread across Europe as Germany quickly overran Poland with the help of the Soviet Union, using blitzkrieg tactics. Lightning fast, overwhelming assaults by air and land. As the war progressed, the Axis powers, Germany, Italy, and Japan, expanded their reach. In 1940, Hitler launched invasions across Western Europe, toppling France and threatening Britain. Meanwhile, in the Pacific, Japan had already begun its expansionist ambitions, invading China and establishing a brutal empire across Asia. By 1941, we had a truly global conflict. The Axis powers were bent on reshaping the world order, and nations were being forced to choose sides. For 2 years, the United States maintained a policy of neutrality. But on December 7th, 1941, Japan's surprise attack on Pearl Harbor brought America into the war. The United States declared war on Japan, and soon after, Germany and Italy declared war on the US, making it a truly global conflict. The tide of war began to turn in 1942. The Battle of Midway marked a decisive victory for the United States in the Pacific. On the Eastern Front, the Soviet Union halted the German advance at Stalingrad. And in 1944, the Allies launched the D-Day invasion, liberating Western Europe from Nazi control. By 1945, the Axis powers were on the brink of collapse. Hitler, cornered in Berlin, took his own life. In the Pacific, the United States dropped atomic bombs on the Japanese cities of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, forcing Japan to surrender. World War II was over, but its legacy would reshape the world forever. The cost of World War II was staggering. An estimated 70 to 85 million lives lost, entire cities destroyed, and nations devastated. The war also led to the fall of empires and the rise of superpowers, the United States and the Soviet Union, setting the stage for the Cold War. The war also prompted a new era of international cooperation. The United Nations was established to prevent future conflicts, while the Nuremberg trials sought justice for the atrocities committed during the war. Yet the lessons of World War II were not easily learned. The search for peace and the fight against tyranny and oppression continues to this day. This was the history of World War II, the story of a world torn apart by ambition, greed, and hatred, and the incredible courage of those who fought to end it. It reminds us that the costs of war are immeasurable, and the importance of peace never more critical.